Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. We're talking airlines again today. It's an interesting development. The TATA Singapore Airlines joint venture is finally off the ground. When I say finally, I mean 20 years after it was conceptualized. Talk about being patient. But it also comes at a time when there is some crowding up happening in the aviation market. The question is how much, and therefore, is this airline on time or is it delayed? The expectation is that it will take off in October, but remember that Air Asia only launched recently, so we already have a crowded market in some ways. Joining me now to discuss this is Jitendra Bhargav, former Executive Director of Air India, also Bangalore Aviation, or Devesh Agarwal joining us from Bangalore, and of course my co-anchor Ayaz Memon. So Ayaz, not too long ago we were talking about how things are getting heated up in the context of Air Asia.
Well, it looks that the entrepreneurs have the appetite to get into the Indian skies and explore the opportunities here. Now, whether there is enough load to fulfill or, kind of meet that appetite is a million-dollar question or a multi-million-dollar question. The experts will tell us whether it's possible or not, but clearly things are happening where Indian aviation is concerned.
After a long time.
After a long time.
Yes. So I'll come to you in a second. Devesh, how are you reading this? I know you've been following this very closely from the time this project has been conceptualized. Are you seeing a sense of crowding already, or is there still a long way to go, or a lot of runway ahead?
No, in fact, I think as you can see with Jet Airways, the main competitor, deciding to sort of give up on the low-cost space, it's very clear that there is potential in the premium market that Vistara is hoping to target. Some sources inside the airline told me that the fact that they want to have a large business class to target, the corporate traffic, which normally takes the morning and evening flights. They say the premium they generate on just those 1 or 2 flights is enough to justify keeping that portion of the aircraft empty the rest of the day.
Okay. So you're saying that the bet in some ways is on premium, which in turn I would imagine is a bet on the economy itself and things looking up. Jitendra Bhargav?
There's no denying the fact that if the economy does well, airlines will do well, because then there's travel, airlines can fill up seats, make revenue, cover their costs. But coming to the basic question, is it crowding of the Indian skies? The answer will be yes. There have been 2 legacy carriers, Air India and Jet Airways. Doing a load factor of something like 71 to 75%. They are not in the 80s. So I wouldn't believe that the premium market is saturated. And Air India more so has been patronized by the government business travel. To that extent, I wouldn't agree with the ways that the market is saturated. Whether Tatas have done the right thing of entering the market. They've been longing to enter, and they're finally entering the market.
No, so you're saying that it's overcapacity, or are you saying it's not?
No, there is no overcapacity.
Okay, you're saying there's still a long runway ahead.
Because you see, if you take the load factor of Air India in business class and of Jet Airways, it'll be nothing more than 50%. You can discount the last 2, 3, 4 years because of the economy downturn.
But should we measure only by the amount of seats the business class can fill?
Because Tatas are trying to target that particular segment of the market.
So that's a big bet on the premium segment.
You see, at the moment, let's look at today's situation. Though Jet Airways and Air India are legacy carriers, full service carriers, but their pricing is close to the low cost carriers. Now, if Tata Singapore Airlines Vistara is going to be marketing itself at a high premium kind of a thing, what kind of loads will they get? Let's not overlook the Kingfisher experience. What was Kingfisher targeting? First class. Exceptionally brilliant, and it was an exceptionally brilliant product. But could they fill up the aircraft? The answer is no. One can look at it. Tata's, a big business house, Singapore Airline, a professionally managed airline, doing exceedingly well. They would have done their basic homework. But then, which business entrepreneur does not do his homework? It's only the market conditions which do not go as per their calculations.
Fair enough. We've got Paramprit joining us from the Center for Asia, CAPA, the Center for Asia Pacific Aviation. Paramprit, how are you seeing this arrival of another airline?
Well, this is interesting times for the aviation space, as my esteemed colleagues mentioned, and especially with TATA SIA, it's a world-class product which SIA is bringing to India, and it seems that they've been patient for almost 2 decades to enter the Indian market, and with the changing environment, it seems that they have taken the call and said that we'll go ahead and see what needs to be done.
Paramprit, are they, Devesh was saying this earlier, are they betting on the business class and the ability to fill up business class seats as a key sort of differentiator as well as a key revenue target?
So there are a couple of things. One is we're talking of the immediate term. What is the immediate impact? And as far as our understanding goes, the airline business is not a short-term business. It's a long-term, call that an airline needs to take. In the short term, there can be all sorts of scenarios wherein, given the excessive competition which is already there, you might see the fight increasing, but their focus would be more on the international sectors because that's where Singapore's strength lies. Singapore Airlines' strength lies. Domestic market, they may want to cater to, they may not want to cater to, but the potential that they see is on the international side, and that's where we feel, over a period of time, that's where the focus would be, wherein they'll bring in complementary, network and planning benefits, and try and see how they can leverage the international traffic and ensure that they get the growth.
Right. Okay. Good. So I think we're trying to understand, what's the equation that's working here. So one is, as you said, this mix between, let's say, premium and non-premium, which is business and non-business. The other is the ability to leverage the international network. I mean, the same day Vistara was unveiled, Jet and Etihad also, had a sort of announcement saying that they're there together. They're going to launch. They're going to have integrated flights, which of course they had announced earlier as well. So it looks like it's all heating up, but which way is it going is the question.
You see, Jet Etihad will naturally feel that their traffic, they'll have competition because so far there is none of the Indian carriers which can really compete with them. Now there are two aspects to it. Traffic to Europe, United States. United States traffic is already being taken away by Singapore Airlines over Singapore. Now it's a question of the European and people wanting to go over the Atlantic, right? When you have these kind of people, you have Jet Etihad combination on one side, and you will have Tata, Singapore Airlines, Vistara trying to take the market. But the question is, 520 rule has still not been repealed. So I don't think Tata Singapore management would have factored then as a key factor for their starting the airline. Presume for a moment that the rule is not repealed for the next 2, 3, 4 years. They'll have to be in the domestic market. They'll have to go by the domestic rules. They will have to play, because India being a price-sensitive market, all this talk that we will be able to price a market 25–30% higher is not going to happen. Put a simple question. You think Naresh Goyal has no business sense? Why is he in huge losses? The fact is, Indian market does not allow an airline to fix fares the way they wanted. Market determines the fares. Right. Vijay Mallya went wrong on the same thing. Right. And now, if Tata Singapore Airlines, their airline, also cannot manage good load factors at premium fares, the cycle of losses will begin too early.
Okay. Ayaz, do you remember flying Kingfisher?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And were you lucky enough to experience the front of the aircraft, as they say?
Yes. No, I thought it was a very good experience. I mean, at least in the early stages, not towards the end, when the hardships began. But I buy the argument which Jitendra is making, that unless the load factor is factored in adequately enough, and load factor at the premium pricing, you might have, there's a sense of deja vu.
But let me put the question differently to you. As a customer, as a passenger, what are you looking forward to? Are you looking for?
I had my glasses cleaned every time I traveled Kingfisher, so and that made for good reading while on the flight. But more seriously, I think yes, you want to feel a little pampered, but I think Indians are still very price sensitive. So you want to be pampered, at the same time you don't want to be dented in the wallet.
Correct.
And I think that's really the crux.
Right. Okay. So Devesh Agarwal, how are you seeing this sort of interplay between wanting to be pampered, willing to pay a certain price, given how things have been in the last few years?
Okay. Govind, as you know, I was a solitaire PPS passenger of Singapore Airlines, which is their absolute highest elite level for a period of 6 years.
Okay. Why do you say was?
In fact, I was their #1 passenger as an individual out of India.
So why do you say was, Devesh?
So I have experienced the airline in terms of its personalized service. You know, they are the ones who introduced the concept of escorting you right from the curb through to the, you know, they don't even really have a check-in desk, but they have a concept of a check-in lounge where you just sit down and your check-in is taken care of, etc., etc. So, you know, in terms of pampering, in the premium classes, they have that. Now, one thing which is intriguing, and I read some reports that the Vistara will bring in a concept of a premium economy class. And in this, now I'm beginning to see the methods, the cabin configuration that is typically found in most US carriers.
Right.
What you will see is that you will have a big size business class, as I said, which will help them earn the money on those trunk routes in the early, you know, the early morning and the late evening flights. And then you will have a premium economy class, which will most likely be the same 3-3 combination, but with most likely a 36 or a 38-inch legroom.
Yeah, right.
And they will target those mid-level managers who are, you know, by company policy not allowed to travel in business class. But you know, this is that, oh yeah, I'm traveling economy class. And so what is going to happen is that Vistara is going to basically go after the corporate customer. And Jet Airways still has some this thing, as Jitendra said, Air India will be more or less reduced to carrying only the government traffic, only because again it is mandated that they have to travel by Air India.
Right.
If that mandate is ever removed, Air India will basically go belly up.
Right. Okay. So, Devesh, one moment. Let me.
Other thing, I'll just let me. This thing I was seeing a few other interplays.
Yeah.
One of the things that you were asking, what do passengers want today? Basically, more than anything else, on a short 2-hour flight, a passenger is not really looking for in-air pampering so much. They are not interested in food. In any case, alcoholic beverages are not allowed to be served on domestic flights. So what is it that people want? They basically want a seamless travel. They want to go from the curb to the aircraft in the minimum amount of time. Don't be surprised if Tata swings a deal with the major airports in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, where they have like something like a fast-track channel through security to get their premium passengers through security quickly.
Okay. So in any case, that's something that other airlines could be aspiring for. Another point which I want to sort of bounce off, and let me begin with you, Paramprit. You know, we've seen Jet simultaneously saying that they were cutting back or they were eliminating their Jetlight and Jet Connect brands. Now, obviously, there was some overlap in any case. But what does that tell you? Does that tell you either that this economy is looking up and people are once again ready for a premium experience, or that there's something fundamentally wrong with the entire no frills approach that we were trying all these years?
Okay, so for Jet, it's a slightly different scenario because they were sort of mixed up between what to do. Do they be a FSC or do they be a LCC? Right? And they've lived with it for quite some time now. So what they're doing now is with the changing scenario, they're saying that, okay, let's be an FSC and let's be only an FSC. What it will help them do is have a clear strategy on how they want to approach their business. The more challenging thing would be how to be an FSC with a low cost structure. And that's where I think lies the holy grail for all the airlines, wherein they would want to be airlines providing a service which can help them generate higher yields. But at the same time, and given the fact that the Indian market is not a very high yield market, as Devesh and Jitenji rightly pointed out, they would want to be closest to the cost structure of an LCC, let's say, and that's where they would want to see how things pan out. At the front end, they'll have to match it up with the services of an LCC. So, for instance, what's the USP of a Indigo? It's on-time delivery, clean aircraft, and efficient service. There's nothing else to it, right? So, what other airlines would want to do is at the front end match up a service level wherein a customer says, okay, should I go to airline A versus airline B? At the back end, they need to have a low-cost structure or low-cost environment, which helps them to protect their margins in a low-yield environment. For Singapore Airlines, what they could also do is, the challenge would be to deliver a defining differentiation in terms of the service that they offer. And as rightly mentioned, they could bring in their global expertise and say, this is what we've tried in international markets, this is where we succeeded, and let's try it out in India as well, and see that customers are given a different level of service altogether, which probably they have not experienced earlier, and try and win those customers and their loyalty.
Right. Just one quick question, Paramprit. What's your sense of how AirAsia has done so far? Because they're really operating on the other end of the spectrum.
Right. So it's too soon. They've just started operations, right? And they've had sort of a rough ride as of now because of all the delays in their approvals and everything. They have sort of got a sense of the ground reality. So their initial plans of kicking off operations early last year or late last year, that has had to undergo some change. And our sense is that given the ground realities, they might have to tweak their approach and strategy a bit further to align themselves to what's happening.
Right. And that's exactly the problem that Vistara or Tata Singapore Airlines may face as well. Ayaz?
No, so Govind, my question is that Vistara or Tata and Singapore Airlines, they've been pretty dogged about it, pursuing it for 20 years. There have been a couple of downturns, economic downturns and upturns. Now, and there is a certain class or a category of passengers that they are chasing. So obviously, I would imagine that they've done very robust research getting into this. Is that matched by what we are seeing in the general aviation sector? That kind of optimism. I mean, it may be a different category of passengers, but we've seen some airlines going under. I mean, even Jet is exiting the low-cost travel. Spice Jet has run into a problem. Is just to take up from what Jitendra has been saying, is the load factor good enough to sustain? Or
I think
are we going to see more blood on the floor or in the skies?
Yeah. So, and let me add a quick data point there, Jitendra, before you respond to that. So, domestic air traffic in June grew 4.2%. This is lower than the average global growth rate. So we are still far from, India as an economy is actually growing faster than many other economies, potentially could grow faster, but aviation is actually lagging.
You see, if you look at Asia Pacific, it accounts for the largest share of international traffic. Now, Air India has been dragging the Asia Pacific load factors and profitability. There's no denying, because India has been operating without an aviation policy. The ad hoc decisions get taken. Nobody is doing a research study kind of a thing. How much capacity do we need? At what growth rate of economy? And how many airlines? So you have no kind of relationship with the cost factor like the ATF prices, airport charges, etc. On the other side are the low yield because of the price sensitivity of the market. Now you can reduce your cost to an extent, but not beyond a point. Now all airlines in the last 10-15 years have been on the cost reduction program. Now unless you generate adequate revenues, how do you cover your cost? That's the question. Now Vistara, as I said, Singapore Airlines on one side, Tata Group on the other side, have a lot of business experience. But then anybody entering a market enters with a lot of optimism. It's the market results that turns optimism into pessimism. As I said in the beginning, let me say, Singapore Airlines, all right, who's going to loan the aircraft to this airline? Singapore Airlines. Are you going to be playing with the lease rentals? If a company not attached to an airline was to take an aircraft on lease, how much would it cost? And will there be conflict of interest?
Okay, so you're saying a transfer pricing issue there, okay?
At least on the international front, TCS is a huge market. At one time, TCS was accounting for 10% of Air India's India region revenue. There's so much of travel of TCS. At what fares are you going to sell tickets to TCS now? Is it going to be like Air India, that you make MPs and the government bureaucrats pay full fare? Not now, but till about 4 or 5 years ago, that was the scenario. Now, what's going to happen? Now,
so you're saying they could potentially depend on Tata Group employees
absolutely.
And why not?
Let's put it this way, like government wants the government people to travel on Air India and people protest, including journalists like you, right? Will you protest when Tata's issue an order that all Tata airline employees for their official travel will travel only by...
But we don't know whether they'll do that.
Hold it. It's a natural thing. Let me put it this way. If I was owning an airline, I would do the same thing. Make my family travel at least, if nobody else. Now, question comes in. is there a policy or a long kind of vision that one can have? Say, for example, I don't want to say that, but let me say, if circumstances, market, make air SpiceJet kind of thing, as they start curtailing the business as the economy worsens, what happens? Devesh rightly said Air India. Now, look at the Air India scenario. You just become members of the Star Alliance, right? A big statement that came out was that they will now aspire to have 75% customer satisfaction because it gives you voting rights in Star Alliance. Now, how ridiculous can you get? Should that be the motivating factor for customer satisfaction? Or it should have been all along? Now, look at the way
that's the outcome of a,
No, but that's what I'm saying. So the policy, if there was wisdom in the government, whether it's the minister.
So you're saying that eventually it depends on the government because this is a very policy sensitive.
I'm not talking just Air India, but the government. The policies that are initiated by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, which lacks experience in aviation. Now, question is, if you see now, all the airlines that come in, why do they get expat CEOs and COOs?
Because they run.
Because there is no experience available within the country. Now, if you don't have experienced hands and you are sitting in Rajiv Gandhi Bhavan in Delhi laying down policies, you cannot have airlines doing well. Somebody has to be responsive to the needs of the airline industry. And what do they want? What should be done to make it robust?
Okay, good point. So let's, Devesh, let me come back to you. Very policy sensitive industry, aviation that is, and it's we are still not in a position where the writers of policy or the creators of policy fully understand what the problems on ground are, which eventually leads to all kinds of larger issues, particularly with the airline companies themselves. Do you agree?
Yeah, you see, I fully agree. Last time also, if you remember, in one of the hangouts, both Mr. Bhargav and me and I think Amber Dubey of KPMG, we talked about a lack of a comprehensive policy. I was just now at the Farnborough Air Show, which, as you know, is one of the premier air shows of the world. 2 years ago, India was talked about extensively. This year, at every press conference, the word India was not even mentioned. We are totally off the radar screen of the world's aerospace industry by and large. Airlines, airline companies, aircraft companies, countries. They don't, I mean, India has sort of dug its own grave in the civil aviation sector by the very muddled approach that, you know, the government has had till now and continues to have.
Okay, fair enough. Paramprit Singh, can I mean, this is a very large issue meriting separate discussion, but Paramprit, can I ask you this? I mean, do you agree with the general proposition that the fate of all these airlines and new airlines that are being launched in some ways is still very, very tightly interlinked with the way policy is determined or directed?
Absolutely, I think there's no two doubts about it, and the ironical thing is when we say that when you use the term policy, there is actually none. There is no policy for, you know, you forget about airlines, airports, ground handlers, MROs. I mean, it's all done on a piecemeal basis, because of which there's just a lack of coordination between how each of these segments of the aviation industry would work. The requirement, and we've been pressing for it for multiple years now, is to have a comprehensive, far-reaching vision statement from the government, which could be a 2020 or a 2040 vision statement, which is backed by a policy which not only looks at just the airlines, it also looks at the entire value chain within the aviation space, because airlines are the starting point. If they don't make money, then there's a challenge for everyone. So I think on the policy front, there's absolutely no ambiguity that there is no policy, and that's the need of the hour.
Right, got it. So let's come back to the primary question, right? We started by asking, here's a new airline that is launching in October. Are they on time or are they delayed?
You see, no Brahmin will tell you this to the right time. Let me put this way. Every time is good time as long as your business model is right. Let me explain to you. Because airline industry, by nature, has always had ups and downs in life. Every 3, 4, 5 years, you have an economy downturn, some war somewhere in the world, and it has its impact on the airline industry, etc. So I would agree.
And you're saying the arrival of new entrants in the space is part of that up or down?
No, I'm not talking. I'm just talking of the number of people traveling.
Okay.
It's that determines the kind of fate of an airline.
Yes, yes.
So Vistara entering the market, any time would have been good time. Let me explain to you. It's the business model and its impact on the other airlines that will basically determine how much the business they can garner. Now, what has been the standard practice globally? I'm not talking just India. When you enter the market, you offer attractive, which means low fares, to get people from the other airlines to patronize you. They will do it. Air India and Jet Airways do not have the capacity. They'll have to match the fares, but their losses will only go up. What do you do in the circumstances? So if you look at by default, because the other two airlines are not going to be in a healthy position to compete with you on the domestic I'm talking about, you are basically going to gain. Both because of your superior product, you will have a good marketing game, you have web sales and everything that you look at, you will have an edge over others. Why did Jet get into with Etihad? Financially and also for the technology that Etihad has superior technology than what they were using. So that way they are going to gain. So I at least think Vistara will have a future, right? Financially, I'm putting a question mark.
Particularly after 2 or 3
number
years.
of people, and then again whether the same vicious cycle will come in, that do I expand at the cost of profitability or expand and suffer losses for some time and then losses decide whether I must curtail my kind of a thing. A dilemma that all airlines have been through in their history.
Right. Okay. So we're running out of time. Let me ask a 30-second question and answer to both Devesh and Paramprit. Devesh, how are we sort of entering that vicious cycle once again? And if at all, can this be prevented this time?
See, everybody is focusing on domestic. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
As far as I see, this is a long-term play by the Tatas and Singapore Airlines to create an international airline. And let's face it, you think the Tatas don't have the clout to influence the 520 rule? It is going to go. It is going to go within this next 12 months. I can stake my rep on it.
Okay. If I can intervene, Naresh Goyal also has a clout. Don't forget this. And he has proven this clout for the last 20 years.
Okay. You're saying Naresh Goyal to keep them out. Okay.
Yeah.
Or rather, not allow them to fly.
If you could keep Tata Singapore Airlines out of the Indian market for so long, what is the 520 rule?
Into Star Alliance, because Star Alliance did not want to repeat a situation that they had when they tried to bring Jet Airways. This way they brought Air India in, and the moment Tata Sia, qualifies internationally, they will start Tata Sia as into the Star Alliance.
Right. Okay. Devesh, let me interrupt you there, and let me get Paramprit in. Paramprit, last word. I mean, are we? The question we started by asking was, is this new airline that's launching, that's Vistara, the Tata SIA combination, is it on time in terms of opportunities, market, and so on, or is it delayed?
Well, in terms of opportunities, I think there's no denying the fact that there's tremendous opportunity in India, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a question of the perspective, whether you're looking at the short term or whether you're looking at the long term. And my sense is that given how Singapore Airlines and Tatas think and approach their businesses, they're in it for the long run, and they've made a good starting point with a good product. With they're pretty well capitalized, at least at this point in time. I'm sure they've done their research and tried to understand what the consumer wants and requires, and they would want to get their front end servicing and product right, as well as try and have a handle on the back end in terms of the cost, and that'll see them through.
Right, and also, I mean, we will obviously note your point which you made earlier, which is that this market can be full of surprises. AirAsia discovered it very recently, and it's quite likely that a Tata SIA may also face all kinds of problems which they haven't anticipated. Last word and then last word. Yeah.
One must not overlook the planning stage. For example, I would say right from the beginning, the name of the airline, a Sanskrit word, they've done it well. The logo, they've done it well. So a good amount of planning has gone, and as I said, if the business model is right, you can be good. And as Devesh said very rightly, internationally, they will be a threat to any existing airline which is operating into India, and particularly Jet Etihad combination.
Okay.
So they have a future, but as long as they are confined to the domestic market, then what I said earlier, it's a difficult.
And not to forget that the policy environment itself hasn't really evolved. Right?
So our politicians will not allow that. Please remember, if you have a policy, then you can't oblige people for a consideration.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Thank you for saying publicly what I've been got.
I think what we've got in the current scenario, and I'm from a layman's point of view, we've got two very powerful business houses
whose spectacles are clean ones,
and
who's enjoyed good service.
They will obviously ensure quality of the product or the experience of travel. I think fundamentally what we are reaching out and what everybody, having heard everybody, is the civil aviation policy needs to be far more dynamic or proactive.
And there has to be a policy. Yes.
There has to be a policy. The other is obviously that the state of the economy should be healthy and robust, not just for the next 2 years, but for the next 10 years to make this whole thing come alive in a more, in a more vibrant way.
And a sustainable way.
If Vistara can be Air India of the 50s and the 60s, it has a bright future.
He's a romanticist.
Yes. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much. Very interesting times ahead. One airline launched a few months ago. There's another one which is launching in another few months. It's going to be really exciting times up in the skies. We'll be back on India Hangout tomorrow same time. Thanks for watching.